to Heroes of Cosplay Sanctuary podcast. This is your host, Scotty B. In this episode, we are talking about batching content and minimizing content for your cosplay. So what does that really mean for the cosplayer? Batching content and minimizing the amount of time that you're spending putting yourself out there. That's really what we're talking about. So as a cosplayer, you probably spend a lot of time promoting yourself, promoting what you're going to do next, promoting the conventions that you go to, and you're on TikTok, and you're on Instagram, and you're on Snapchat, and you're on Patreon, and you're on Ko-fi, and you're on YouTube, and you're on, the list goes on and on. Vero, beyond Vero. But it's a lot of work, and it's constant. There's never any ending to it. It's just every single day you feed those beasts, and you see what you get out of it. That is the nature of the game. And that is how everything is set up. But does it really have to be that way? If you're a cosplayer and you have to go to all of these events and you have to travel around and you have to create the costumes and the content and get all the systems working together and making sure that you have all your collabs straight and all that other stuff, it's a lot to organize. I mean, let alone just trying to book a hotel to stay at and who your roommates are going to be, or if you're actually going to be able to afford a room on your own, or what the flight looks like and when it's taking off, when it's landing, what you're going to eat. You know, there's all these little details, and half of them don't have anything to do with the cosplay itself. Half of them are just getting A to B. That's it. You know, what am I going to rent a car? Am I getting an Uber? How am I getting from one point to the other? When are the events that I need to be at? Who am I going to see? How are we meeting up? All of these texts going back and forth, a lot of DMs going back and forth. So it's all very overwhelming, very fast. And not only that, but then you have to spur of the moment come up with all of these ideas on getting content out the door so that you stay relevant. There's probably a lot of conversation about that I didn't cover in the last series that I talked about Instagram in. You feel that you will be irrelevant very quickly if you don't constantly produce content. So the best way that I can suggest for you to get around all of that is to batch as much of it as you can in small spaces in your schedule. I create this podcast. I put out one episode or maybe a few more depending on what the series is or what I'm trying to do each week. There will be 52 episodes in this season. I have a schedule where I produce so many of them every week for you. So I recorded X amount the first week. I think I did 4 for the initial offering or for the initial launch of the podcast. So I have 4 done at this moment in time. I am now recording a bunch more so that I have a whole bunch of things that I can record all at once, edit all at once, and then schedule all at once so that I can do everything as a batch. So this week is all recording, and I have very little time on the weekend to do that. So I try and pick weekends where I don't have a whole lot going on, and I'm not traveling, and I'm not working, and I'm not engaged in other things that I might have obligations to do. There's no family friend event or anything like that coming up this week. So I have time right now in this moment. And I put that on the calendar that way once upon a time to say, okay, this is going to be the day and I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to get up at this time and I'm going to spend this many hours getting podcasts recorded. So that I wouldn't be doing it one, like, oh God, I need to get another one out next week and I haven't recorded anything. So I'll just do one right now and then I'll push it out. And then a week will go by and I'll do another one and I'll just keep doing that. So that takes way more time. So if I was doing like one a day and I was never getting ahead of that because I thought I had to push out one every single day, just like a video or just like a photo, if I'm doing one at a time and only one and doing everything I need to do for all of that, all over the place, it's all consuming and I'm going to get burnt out. I'm not going to be able to think of what I'm going to do next. What I do spend a lot of time on is scheduling all of this and arranging all of it. I batch as much as I can. And I don't batch the photos right now because I'm just doing that kind of often as I feel I want to. So Monday through Friday, every morning, I try to put out a story and then I'll try to write one in the afternoon. So that's 15 seconds. That's not a big thing for me as far as content and what I'm putting out. It's just in my spare time, boom, here's one small thing. And here's a piece of micro content that they can go towards other pieces. Those aren't necessarily batched. That's just, hey, this was in the moment. Stories are really good for that. There are a lot, Snapchat is a really good place for that. TikTok may be a really good place for that. But what people do is they use that as their content engine. But as far as photos are concerned, like, you can schedule those out. You can even schedule tweets. You can use all sorts of different kinds of dashboards that will help you organize where you put what and when, so you can get all of this scheduled, and you can just sit down and say, okay, well, I'm going to schedule posts for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and LinkedIn and wherever else you might be putting this stuff. It changes from platform to platform, but yes, as a cosplayer, I think it would be so cool if somebody in cosplay actually pointed to LinkedIn, because as far as like the industry and what goes on inside of it, I don't see anybody doing that. So getting back to batching content, so put it all in one space, mark it on your calendar and say, I'm going to block out this time just to do this, to create this many pictures. So maybe I want 2 weeks worth of photos ready to go, if I have that luxury. Or maybe I just, take a couple of outfits, like take 4 outfits out of your closet, do all the selfies at once. Do people really know or care that it was in this moment in time? As long as there's not so much time going by between things where you're taking selfies in summer and posting them in winter, where it makes that big of a difference in the environment, that might be a little bit weird. But if it's just a photo that you want to share with people over the course of 2 weeks, does it really matter that at that moment, this is where you were and this is what you were doing? Well, it's relative. It's within a week or two. I still say that's fine, as long as you're okay with the photo that you produce, and that there's enough variety between one from the next to the next. And that isn't even really that important. You can switch things up or change up backgrounds or whatever you want to do. Take them in different locations in your house. It doesn't make any difference, as long as it's easier for you to produce that content. So if you have costumes, or maybe you have more than one, just have them all handy. Take pictures with all of those in one time, 3 or 4 photos of each, times 4 costumes. That's 16 pictures that you now have, that you don't have to waste a lot of time day to day to day trying to figure out if this is going to be the perfect shot. And you use that to minimize the amount of time that you have to spend on every single post. So that's step 1. So you created all that content. So if you're gonna shoot videos, and you have a lot of how-to that you're shooting for, or DIY that you're shooting for inside of cosplay, so I'm going to teach you about, just start writing down your ideas. But once you have the ideas written down and everything scripted and where you want it, have one day dedicated to creating 4 to 6 videos at a time, and using that space just to do the filming. So you have all that video done, and you don't have to come back to it week by week by week by week and keep shooting it or reshooting it, or going, oh, I didn't really like it last time, so let's do it again, and we'll just keep doing more and more. And it's really spur of the moment, and it has to be done like almost overthought every single time. So this will prevent you from feeling rushed, from feeling overwhelmed. You just sit down on that day, and you're far enough out, you've got enough batched, so that it gives you a longer runway now that you're producing. So if you're producing videos, or if you're putting out podcasts twice a week, if you do 8 at once, you have 4 weeks of content. That's a whole month. So you don't have to schedule maybe for another 3 weeks to start again, because that's when your content will start to run out. Or you could just start batching it. So I'll do 4, then I'll do 8, and then next week maybe I'll do another 8. And that's all the recording I have to do for like 4 months, because I've got so much done that now next week I can just do the editing, and I can get all of that done. I can batch all of that instead of doing one at a time. I can say, okay, well, I'm just going to sit down for 2 hours and edit all of them, add all the intros, the outros, get all of the tracks synced up, do all the stuff that I need to do right in one time. I'm off the hook as far as recording, so I don't have to switch gears or try and think of a way to be more interesting, or think of, while I'm editing, going, wow, that really sounded bad, but now I'm going to try and get up and do it again. It's going to just sound bad to me. Like, maybe I'm just not in the mood. I don't know. Sometimes you have to force yourself to put together the content all at once, but it does leverage your time so much better to do it that way. I suggest you do try it. For all of the rambling on that I'm doing as far as how to do it, pick a date during the month. Do all the filming one day. The next week, pick a date just to do the editing, publishing of that content. Get it all scheduled and ready so that you know what's coming out and when. And now all you have to do is think about how you're going to promote what's coming out and when it's coming out, and then you have to just kind of remember or write down which episode that you're supposed to be talking about and have your notes from that handy, or the script that you wrote, the loose script. I do recommend for anything that you produce to have a loose script. I do have notes for every podcast that I produce, and those notes, generally I wake up pretty early in the morning when I still have some ideas floating around in my head, and I start to flesh out what I want to talk about in the order that I want to talk about it. Also really helps to know your subject matter very well, so that when you do start talking, you don't get lost 10 minutes into your podcast and start rambling on about random things or getting too far off base, just like I did here, talking about batching content and minimizing the amount of time that you want to spend doing any single thing that you go off on a tangent because you're not sure what you're going to talk about. But it really does help to have notes as far as what you're doing. Also, the fun thing about video or audio or even just pictures is you can delete them and take them again. I could delete this whole podcast right now. Sure, it would be some time spent. If I don't like it, I can redo it. I can go back, I can re-record things, I can edit things out that I don't like. It's not just a one and done. This isn't a live show. So I have time to produce it, I have time to edit it. It will publish at regular intervals. So it's much easier on that side of things, that it just keeps churning out on its own versus me having to manually churn it out. There are other things that can be done manually as far as bringing people in, but as far as producing, creating a schedule and creating a way to batch what you're doing can work wonders for your schedule and can put you on a nice path to always being a step ahead of what you're trying to tell your audience and that truth that you're trying to speak and those pain points that you're trying to solve. So it gives you time to go out and figure out how people are reacting to what you're doing, so you can tweak a little bit here and there. So the other side of that is creating the copy. And what do I mean by copy? I mean what you write that goes along with your episodes, what you write that goes along with your scripting, with the descriptions for your podcasts or anything else like that you might produce for your audience inside of Cosplay. So whatever you are talking about, make sure that you do spend some time researching that topic. It will make it much easier for you to keep talking on and on and on. So if you're going to talk about foam armor, make sure you know a lot about foam armor first, have worked with it, produced a few pieces out of foam armor, so that when you're going back to your audience, you say, well, here's what I experienced with this. Here's what worked for me. Here's what didn't. And here's what I can tell you. If you're going to try and make this stuff on your own, don't do this. Try to do this. Here's the glues that work. Here's the practices that work. Here's the bevel that makes the most sense that I use. Here's the kind of setup that you want. There's all sorts of ways that you can describe that now that you've actually experienced it for yourself, rather than just watching someone else do it and going, well, I'm not really sure what to talk about now because I don't know enough about that. So part of minimizing is to also focus hard on those times that you're using to do the research, that you're using all of your hands-on, all of the doing that you do within cosplay. Every time you put on a costume, every time you fix a costume, that is an experience of yours, and you're learning something from that. So every time you've had to repair something, every time you've made something, every time you've negotiated with someone online about making something for you and how to feature them or how to get in contact, bring people to them, anything like that, that all adds to that depth of copy that you're writing for that particular post or for that particular episode. And you want to make sure that you spend enough time with that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but grammatically correct is always a bonus. Spelling error free is always a bonus, because you want to make sure that there's credibility in what people are reading. It is your opinion with some fact involved. The fact being that you've tried this, you're not necessarily an expert. You are providing them with something that solves their problem. And you're doing it relatively efficiently for yourself. With the copy and with batching content, also searching and doing research on keywords and different phrases that also get you on top of the Instagram algorithm or in other spaces, using at least 7 hashtags, as many as 25 for any given post, so that you're reaching as many people as you can with what you're doing inside of the cosplay world. So you don't want to get too far off base with all of your words and with what you're doing. If that's not your audience, look at what your cosplayers want, why they follow you, what they're looking for, or in terms of fandom, maybe not all of these people are cosplayers, but that they have a common thread and something that they're looking for, and they're coming to you for that reason, and you're able to give them more of what they want. So if I were going to summarize everything that I've spent the last 10 or 15 minutes talking about, it really does just boil down to organizing yourself and creating a schedule that works for you, whether you've got a written calendar or whether you've got something on your phone that tells you when to do what. Doesn't really make any difference as far as that's concerned, but as long as it is consistent and that it's pulsed out consistently as you can for your audience so that they start to come to you in regular time frames. So this isn't the DVR approach. This is the I create videos every Tuesday and Thursday. Please watch or put notifications on for those times because that's when the new stuff is going to come out. So they start coming to you at those times to look for your content. That's so valuable. So if you can get it on a schedule where you're not just creating random videos and wondering why nobody's watching your videos, it's because they're coming out randomly. You produced one on Monday, 2 weeks went by, another one came out on a Wednesday, and then maybe a Tuesday the week after. So there's like no schedule or rhyme or reason to any of it. If you batch your content and you create 4 or 8 or 12 or whatever the case is, maybe you spend a whole weekend shooting videos, or maybe you spend a whole weekend at a photo shoot producing content, or you just take a bunch of pictures on your own over a weekend. Whatever the case is, that it creates enough variety for you in that moment or in that space of time that you can schedule enough out that you're being absolutely consistent, posting at the exact same times or thereabouts every single day, not just picking random times to put random content online, that your audience starts to get trained on when you put out what. So they're going to look for you every Friday, or they're going to look for you every Wednesday afternoon and go, oh, I'm going to get home from work, and at 5 o'clock, I know that video is going to be out. It's not really new for you. You did it 2 months ago, or whatever the case is, but it's new enough for them. And that's the same as it is with any sort of a TV series too. And we know they're usually shooting an entire season at once. I know that Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. works that way. They had all of the last season filmed before they even talked about it being canceled. It was already done before anyone knew it was done. And they're still working on the season before. So that's usually how it happens, is they're pretty far ahead of the game because they need all that extra time for possible reshoots, for all the editing, for all the effects to go in. And there's a lot of people working on everything, never mind the promotion. So promoting it is really what you're spending your time on, saying, hey, I did this thing, go and find the thing. And that becomes more of the day-to-day versus the day-to-day being, oh crap, what do I have to come out with? So I hope I've beaten that one to death for you, just being organized and being able to produce content at scale for what you want to do inside of cosplay. It really works for any industry, but I'm particularly interested with how it will work inside of cosplay and what you will produce at scale in these spaces on Instagram, television, on YouTube, as podcasts, and with your stories. It's already amazing because all of you put so much energy and work and passion into what you do. So for that, I thank all of you, but also thank you so much for being with me this week. And every single week that I put out content, even when I do try and batch as many of these as I can to save myself a little bit of time and scheduling, because I'm kind of busy too, so I want to try and get it dialed in and as focused as I can. But there are always moments to create. There is always something else to say. So if you're speaking your truth, you're never going to run out of content, and I very much believe in that. Whether it's Batman or whether it's X-Men or whatever the case may be about your fandom, or just about the industry in general and about what you can do with it and the people that you reach at the conventions. That's all I have to say this week. We'll be back next week with another episode. This is Scotty B, and you're listening to the Heroes of Cosplay Sanctuary podcast. Thanks so much.